My fiancé, James, and I have been together for 3 years, planning a wedding for October 2016. A few months before we met, James bought a brand new home in a newer subdivision. We recently refinanced it and added my name. Before me, James dated a woman, Britt, for about 7 months. She's never been to this current house. From what he's told me, they broke up when he decided they weren't as compatible. The breakup was rough, to the point where he and neighbors called the police when she wouldn't leave his front yard and was screaming at 10 p.m. at night. This is all from what he and his sister have told me. I don't have a reason to not believe them. I've only had a few run-ins with Britt. These have been at restaurants or just coincidences out in public. We never spoke up until now. The problem, Britt has bought a house in the same subdivision that we live in. We even share a cul-de-sac. The only reason we found out about this is from a flyer we got welcoming her to the neighborhood. Our subdivision is very community-oriented. James insists he's never told her where he lives and hasn't spoken to her since the night he called the police. We both brushed it off as a coincidence, but lately it's becoming very weird. Here's why. I work for a company that allows me to work from home 3 out of the 5 days. Our home is a ranch and my office window faces the street. I'm not sure what Britt does for a living, but she does not work during the day. From about noon until 3, she spends her time walking up and down our street. When she passes our house, she doesn't take her eyes off of it. It's almost like she can see me in the office. She'll even stop in front of our house and stretch there for about 5 minutes. Every day anyone is at home. It makes me uncomfortable to the point where I have all of our blinds closed during the day. I understand the need for exercise, but she walks for 3 hours just going up and down our street. Another issue is when either James or I are outside with the dog, she'll let her dog outside and it will come sprinting to our yard. This causes her to come and get her dog. Every time she says, "I'm sorry, we're still working on training." James and I are always polite. Normally, I would be okay with this, but James has pointed out that any other time she lets her dog out and we're not outside, she'll immediately correct him before he runs off. She never corrects him when we're outside. We've been getting ding-dong ditched a lot since she's moved in. Something that's never happened in the 4 years that James owned the house. The doorbell will ring around dinner time, between 6 and 8, and by the time anyone gets to the door, no one will be there. It's gotten to the point where our Doberman has picked up the routine and waits by the front door, pacing. The last issue, which I believe might be illegal, is that our mail seems to go missing for a while and then pop back up. What I mean is, Britt will knock on our door and say that she received our mail and is just returning it. This has never happened with the previous owners in her house. We don't have a new mail carrier either. It seems to happen once a week and she'll always bring it on a Friday night. Based on the date on the envelopes, we can tell she's been holding it all week. This has pushed James over the edge because she had our water bill, which resulted in us being 2 days late on the payment. James is neurotic when it comes to paying bills. Every time I have to convince him not to go over and yell at her because we haven't actually caught her taking it out of our mailbox as much as I try to monitor it. She usually gets 2 days worth of mail because those are the days I'm not working from home. The other days I get it right away. I'm not sure what to do at this point. I don't want to piss her off by confronting her, but how can I get her to stop? She's making us nervous and I feel uncomfortable in my own yard most of the time because I know she is watching. I know this sounds strange, but I'm not sure if I can legally do anything about it. I don't have anything against her, it's just becoming an annoyance. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years, 8 months engaged. We've had our ups and downs, but for the most part things have been pretty great, until she moved in 6 months ago. We've been combining our lifestyles and finances, basically easing into merging our lives together. The problem is she's a people pleaser, in her own words. She's been in therapy for 6 years, and I guess I never knew how bad it was until moving in with her. A lot of which she's hidden from me. She recently was promoted into accounts payable at her company and realized she is the lowest paid person on payroll. She didn't negotiate a good starting wage, and has never asked for a raise, or had one, despite multiple promotions. She inherited a car a few months ago and sold it. She had offers online from $18,000 to $25,000, but sold it to the first person who showed up for $10,000. She caught someone stealing her bike at college. The woman stealing the bike managed to convince my fiancé that it was actually her bike and my fiancé just let her take it, despite the fact that she caught the woman cutting her bike lock. Last spring was my 30th birthday and she ordered a giant chocolate cake for the party. The cake normally comes with nuts, but given my allergy for nuts she ordered it without them. Well, when she went to pick it up and it had nuts on it, she just paid for it and brought it home. I couldn't even be in the same room as the cake. Which brings us to tomorrow. My father recently passed away and I need to fly to the other end of the country to get things sorted out with family, attend the funeral, etc. Meanwhile, we recently had a pipe burst in our home, and the contractors will be out tomorrow to fix it. My flight's at 6 a.m. and my fiancé will have to handle it, including all the negotiations because we don't know the extent of the damages. I've been giving it a lot of thought and I just don't trust my fiancé to handle it. And if I can't trust or rely on her to do something like this, how can we really be life partners? I mean, I trust that she is always looking out for me and has my best interest at heart, but I can't trust her to get things done. We've talked about it a few times before, but it's been unproductive. She's convinced she's just being nice and doesn't like confrontation, then brings up examples of extremely confrontational people. I think she puts her aversion to conflict above her / our long-term goals, and she needs to find a happy medium. She doesn't understand how negatively this is impacting her life. But at the same time, we've had some amazing years together and she really is a great person. We're compatible in almost every other way. My boyfriend started asking to join me in my girls' night in. Every time I tried to say no, he'd be like, "I have to join or you'll have to cancel." It made me and the girls miserable having to sit there with him in the middle. This past Friday he insisted to join us again. I had enough. I came up with an idea to get him to hate hanging out with us. Made a plan and told the girls what we were going to do and they were down for OT. The girls came and my boyfriend immediately sat with us and started ruining our conversations by steering them towards him / his work / his achievement. So here's what I did. I started bringing up gross / embarrassing subjects and the girls were eating them up by talking about them in details. Subjects like sevks, periods, his most sensitive spot, cramp diarrhea, hairy legs, fart getting trapped in the vulva and coming out the front, squeezing shit out of our faces, cramp diarrhea, dirty underwear, and again, cramp diarrhea. We talked about this stuff in boring details, like, I could feel his discomfort without even looking at him. But God, when I turned to see why, he got quiet suddenly. He was getting red in the face, and had sweat all over his forehead. I bet he found himself unable to relate to this subject, thus couldn't take part in the conversation. He got up from the couch ready to head out. I looked at him and asked where he was going and he was like, I just remembered that I have an important meeting with a guy in about 10 minutes and I have to go now. He rushed out telling us to have fun. The girls and I started laughing hysterically. He came home and berated me saying I made him feel uncomfortable / sick with the horrible subjects I kept bringing. I said, what you talking about? This is the typical stuff girls talk about all the time, but he insisted I made him upset and caused him to leave. He declined to speak to me and been quiet since then. This is his apartment. He tells me who is and isn't allowed to come, and I thought this was fine since it's his place. Though I help with the bills, but he makes so much more as the head of security in his company, so that's that. I just can't believe how dense and blind I've been to his negative ways. He's still giving me the silent treatment and I've decided it's just a lot to take. And so I'm temporarily moving in with one of the girls and will now be definitely reconsidering few things. Ex and I had way too young. We're friendly co-parents. One big rule we share is if our daughter breaks something, she pays for it. Now, sis and I are the only grandkids. Aunt never married. Instead, she worked with GMA and GPA at their Seams Tri store, and took it over when they retired. Sis's girlfriend proposed last year. GPA offered to make FSIL a custom suit, which she was over the moon about. GMA had me ask Sis what her dream dress was and record the convo. Sis, thinking it was just between us, told me in great detail what her dream dress was, though said it was way too expensive. So she would get something much cheaper. Well, a few months later GMA surprised sis with her dream wedding dress. It FOT perfectly and everyone cried. Sadly, GMA recently passed away, which hit us all hard. Sis was devastated, but decided that the dress meant GMA would still be there with us at the wedding. The issue comes in with C. She's very large, much larger than sis. 3 days ago, we decided to go visit sis and see how she was doing. It was great, but then C asked if she could try on the dress. Sis politely said no. C made a face, but dropped it. Later, we decided to go grab dinner. Sis and I went to pick up our orders, but C decided to stay and play with sis's dog. We got back, and the dress was destroyed. C had apparently tried to get it on, popping some seams, and got stuck. Instead of waiting for help, she cut her way out. The dress was hacked to bits. Sis was devastated and asked us to leave. I grounded C and called Aunt with some pictures, asking if it could be saved. She said there was no. She said she'd make a new one, but it wasn't the same. Then she dropped the bomb on me. GMA had hand-sewed most of the dress, used super expensive fabric, and put almost 500 hours in making that dress. Since it was the only family wedding we'd have. In total, the dress cost $12,000, give or take. C has about $15,000 saved from various jobs, as well as winning writing competitions. This was supposed to help her in college. I took her to the bank and set in motion transferring all the funds, since as her parent I still have control over it. $12,000 to Aunt to pay for the new dress. $3,000 to my sister's wedding, as an emotional distress tax. I explained exactly why this was happening to C, but she sobbed the entire time, asking what was she supposed to do for college and saying it wasn't her fault. I told her she could get a job if she didn't get a scholarship. And it was her fault for trying on the dress after she'd been told no, and for not waiting until we got back. A few popped seams could have been fixed. Hacking the dress to pieces couldn't. C told my ex, and while she agreed C was in the wrong after the full story, said I shouldn't have ruined her future for a free dress. I reminded her of our rule, and she still thinks I'm wrong. $3,000, that was to make up to my sister that C destroyed the last gift our dead grandma ever gave her. I consider that part of the price of destroying the dress, since even if Aunt remakes it, it's lost a great deal of its sentiment value. I pointed out how young we has her because I wanted to explain how a 31-year-old has a 16-year-old kid. I do not resent having her. She's the best thing I've ever done. I also brought up C's size because sis has Crohn's disease and thus is very tiny. The dress was made her for size, and C is much larger than sis. I love C as she is, but just holding the dress up, it was clear it wouldn't fit. The money was C's have fun at college money, not her college fund. My ex and I are paying for whatever scholarships don't. When she was asking what she would do for college, she was asking what did she do for fun and to buy things we didn't pay for. I got off the phone with my ex. I sent her the pictures, and she freaked. She apparently didn't believe me when I said it had been hacked apart, and believed it was just a few torn seams. She was pretty much on my side after. She told me that she spent the day badgering our daughter, asking her why she did what she did. And finally C cracked and said she was mad that grandma wasn't alive to make her a dress, and that it was unfair. My sister got a free beautiful dress as a reminder when my daughter got nothing. Despite the many things she was given after the funeral. She tried it on, took it off when the seams popped, and then in anger hacked it apart. If she couldn't have a dress from grandma, no one could. Her own words. Honestly, knowing she did it on purpose has just made things worse. The fact that she could be so